Welcome back to Who Are You, a CSI podcast. I am Lauren, and I've seen CSI through and through around 3 to 4 times.
And I'm Nick, and I'm experiencing these episodes for the very first time.
And today we are reviewing Season 1, Episode 22, Evaluation Day. Original air date is May 10th, 2001. Director is Kenneth Fink. Writer is Anthony E. Zeiker. And that's it.
The one and only.
The one and only. Usually it's Anthony Zeiker plus 1 or 2 or 3 other people, but not today. And I have to admit, I'm immensely curious as to what the Vegas score is, because we're on the Vegas Strip for like 2 or 3 seconds, and then we cut over to a police chase.
So we just talked about how hard
it's going to be to hit one, right?
To hit one. And it definitely happened this episode. We have one scene. It's 3 seconds long.
Yes.
And it works out to like a 1.2, which converts itself to a 1. So.
That's fair. If we're rounding, if we're doing rounding rules.
Well, and there's a formula, right? So there's like a score, and then there's like an output score. So yeah, it's insanely hard. Anything over a 4 total. So if this second scene was 2 seconds longer, or if there were 2 scenes in 3 seconds, it would be a 2, which I realize now is actually very difficult to obtain.
Yeah.
But it happened once, and you know what? That's enough for me. I think 1s and 5s should be super rare.
That's fair.
Right? Yeah, they're on the outside of the
They're
curve.
on the outside on the curve, yeah. So we have a very short moment in Vegas, and then we go to a police chase, and we're watching this police chase, and they do, this is probably not, I'm going to say probably not, this is not officially the term, but they do like the bump maneuver to get the car off the road. So they like, boop, the car with their police car, it like, veers off the road. And as they're surrounding the car and telling the people to exit, and I put 2 girls because I know they're supposed to be like college age. They look so young. Again, Nick and I are like in our late 30s. They look so young. So I put like 2 girls in underwear exit
Victoria's Secret girls.
Yeah, like later. Yes. Yeah,
Catherine refers to them as Victoria's Secret girls later.
Yeah, she does later on. You're right. And so after, kind of the police kind of are relaxing a little bit because it's, 2 underage girls on a joyride. They have a rookie clear the vehicle. That rookie sees some blood. You know what that means? It
was like a weird dollop of blood, and it looked like a metal shard or something.
I think it was supposed to be the latch of the trunk. I think is what it's supposed to be. Because we then have Grissom arrive on the scene. Jim Brass is already there. They talk for a bit. They open up the trunk, which is why I think the blood is like right on the the edge of the trunk. And then there's a decapitated head.
You don't see the head though.
Yeah, you do. Last scene, they pan to it right before they pan away.
Oh, you're right, yeah. But they do this whole drawn out thing where he quotes an Ichabod Crane.
Yeah, they're like Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah. Very Grissom moment.
I already told them.
I think that's the Anthony Zeiker of the show. Is those kind of
those
Grissom moments?
I wonder. Yeah, I think he likes those Grissom moments. Yeah. I told Nick before we started recording that I have a lot of notes for this episode, and there's so much stuff that I left out so that this wouldn't be like a 2-hour podcast because this was just a very jumpy episode and it was very hard to take notes. So there was a lot more dialogue there, but I was like, what's really important is that there was a head in the trunk of the car. We transition to credits. We then have Catherine like walking into HQ. She like drops something off the desk and then she walks into the kitchen. And this is where I didn't
get the first time that was supposed to be her divorce papers. Because then she brings it up against later. I was like, wow, they really glossed over that storyline.
They really did. That was one of my notes. It was like, wow, this did not get that much attention after like Eddie being like a pretty big figure in several episodes.
Yeah.
So she walks into the kitchen. We learn from Grissom that it is evaluation day. So manager Grissom on the case. And you guys know how we feel about Grissom as a manager. So.
If you don't yet, if you're new to this program,
you're going to hear it real soon. So,
hold on to your butts.
Yeah. So we learned that Catherine is going to be with Grissom on the decapitated head case. Sarah is going to be with Nick, which Nick is visibly very upset about. Sarah, on the other hand, excited about it. Look, like road trip. Let's do it up. She's happy. So we learn that he's not happy because he has been a CSI level 3 for 11 months and he thinks, he deserves a promotion and not even a promotion. He hasn't had a solo case.
Yep.
He's like, why, Warwick gets to do solo cases. It's been 11 months that I've been a CSI level 3. I never get solo cases. So Grissom in his just wonderful management style gives him a riddle or I don't even know if it's a riddle. It's like a
vocabulary trick.
Yeah. So he says silk, silk, silk. And he has like Nick repeat him. He's like, say silk, silk, silk. And then he asks, what do cows drink? And Nick
I
says milk, because
I
like
also said milk.
Because your brain is conditioned to, like, our brains love pattern. Our brains want to make sense of information, and it wants to, that's just how it goes. It's water, right? Cows drink water.
Mm-hmm.
They produce milk. Somehow, this disqualifies him from doing a solo.
Unless you're the hood cow, I was like drinking their own milkshake. And the cartoon cows. And the
yeah. So then we also learned that I think this should have been the main point, not the riddle. I don't think the riddle was necessary here. Grissom is concerned that Nick is doing all of this for his approval and not his own approval. Like, he thinks that Nick should want to become a better CSI because he wants to be, like, because Nick himself wants to be a better CSI and not to impress Grissom, which I think that's a fair point, to be like, hey, this really shouldn't be about impressing me. It should really be about, like, you being the best that you can be.
Pride yourself in your excellence, not in your praise.
But don't lead with like a word puzzle. Don't do that. I'm pretty sure if I did that, I've mentioned this before. I'm a manager at my job. I'm pretty sure if I did this to one of my employees, I get written up. Like, HR would have a conversation with me. They'd be like, this is not a fair way to, like, judge your employees.
There's a lot about this scene that would not pass muster in a deposition.
Yeah, it's very strange. So Grissom and Catherine then walk in to the morgue. Doc Robbins is jamming out. He's like, listen, I have no idea what this scene is for.
Doc Robbins is so cool.
So cool. No, I think the only reason this happens is so that Catherine can kind of seem rough around the edges when she announces her divorce. Because she's just like, oh, I'm feeling like sharp. Like, I can say that I don't like this music because I just filed for divorce. And I'm like, this is a really weird way to shoehorn in that you just filed for divorce. I feel like this could have been done a lot better. So, Anthony Zeiker, this is fully on you because you're the only writer. Do better. This was a rough one.
I feel like does that music actually belong to somebody's cousin, and we're just trying to get in the episode.
You know what's funny? The second time I watched it, I thought the exact same thing. I was like, this has to be like Anthony Zeiker's like cousin or nephew or something. Like, I was like, this is so strange, and it's so shoehorned into the episode. Like, it just doesn't make sense. But we then learn, more on par with the episode, that the head belongs to Victor Da Silva. They're going to need to take, like, molds to determine, like, what the weapon was that caused the weapon marks that are on his skull. And in order to get those molds, or for those molds to be, like, best accurate, they're going to have to boil the head, because they're going to need to, like, get down to just the skull. So Grissom and Doc Robbins have, like, a really weird back and forth about, like, their preferred way of boiling a head so that they can peel the skin off like wax.
I'm calling shenanigans on this, because all I could think is, like, if you're destroying the outside, you're destroying the brain. So at this point, you just have a hole, and you don't have to take a mold of anything.
Yeah, I don't.
Like, the whole point of taking a mold is to get an impression of the soft flesh. So I'm not entirely sure what they were trying to do, other than just to have a cool human skull on the table.
Yeah, that could be. I wouldn't be shocked if that was the case. We then go to our other storyline with Warwick talking with Mr. Moore, which is a throw. We're having a lot of throwbacks in the last few episodes. I was like, oh, we're back with Mr. Moore. So we learn that his grandson won't talk to him, but he will reach out to Warwick. And Warwick tells Mr. Moore that there's, a big brawl happened at the detention center, and James, his grandson, is kind of like mixed in with it. Not that he participated, but he was a witness, and now that could cause problems because testifying and not testifying as a witness both have downsides, like pretty severe downsides to them. And we learned that Warwick got himself assigned to the case. So Catherine's not the only one that takes cases that she wants. Warwick also takes cases that he wants. So he's on the case. We then go to Jim Brass and Catherine with the joyriding girls in the interrogation room. They have no clue about the head in the trunk. This is news to them. They're very surprised.
This is also we have what I referred to Lauren earlier as probably my most embarrassing spot the guest star moment.
Oh my gosh. Oh, this is gonna be awesome. Okay, so and I told Nick I don't have a spot the guest star, so I'm actually really excited because I don't have one. So
I had to look up her name, but Carrie Lynn Pratt is the blonde of these two girls.
Yes. Okay.
And she was in a number of, like, teen movies.
Okay.
But really the one that I really know her from is Cruel Intentions 2.
I never even saw Cruel Intentions. Never mind Cruel Intentions 2. So, okay. All right. That's a pretty
if you were a 17-year-old boy in 2000.
Yeah, you probably saw it.
Your friends were all like, you got to go see this movie.
Yeah. That's fair, yeah. And, I wasn't really the target audience for Cruel Intentions.
Our mutual friend Mark and I believe, saw it in the theaters.
Oh my gosh, too funny.
And then I think also probably rented it on Blockbuster home video.
Oh gosh, Blockbuster.
But yeah, they were also in Drive Me Crazy, which is a Melissa Joan Hart movie, which I know because of the Brittany Spears music video that was top of the TLR charts called Stronger.
I don't know if I remember that.
No, it's You Drive Me Crazy. That's the name of the song.
Oh yeah, the You Drive Me Crazy.
Yeah. And there's this whole scene, like Melissa Joan Hart's in the music video.
Oh, okay. I don't remember that part of it.
Melissa Joan Hart,
I do remember from
Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Yes, of course.
And not at all from Clarissa Explains It All.
Oh yeah,
the greatest. That's a very 90s show.
It was such a good show. I loved that show. I mean, maybe it could be a terrible show. Like if I watch it now, I might be like, "Wow, this is terrible," but I really liked it at the time.
I do have a secondary embarrassing Spot the Guest Star follow up, and I think the next scene.
Oh, okay, all right. So we kind of get their tale of the night. They lost their friends at a bar, so they had no way to get home. So they decided to do shots of tequila. And for our younger audiences, taxis were a thing back then, but like Uber and Lyft were not. So it was actually a little bit harder to like get a ride home from a bar than it is today. There was not rideshare services. You'd have to like call a cab, which were pretty expensive. So they end up taking shots of tequila. They meet somebody. They meet a guy at the bar. They end up playing strip poker in his van, but they run away from him fairly.
Did they say he looked like... She's like, oh, he looks like...
Cat Stevens?
Yes,
I think it was Cat Stevens.
I was like, there's no way those girls know who Cat Stevens is.
No. That's definitely not the music that they were listening to. So the guy ends up telling them a story about how a woman was like going to pay him to fly out to her to help her kill herself by shoving a tennis ball down her throat. I'm just so confused by this entire episode. And so fairly, the girls are like, that's scary. And so they burst out of the van, and there just happens to be like a car sitting out there with the keys in it. So they like get into the BMW and they take off. And then that's where we get to the police chase. So we then go back to our other storyline with Warwick and I'm sorry guys, if you can hear my dogs barking in the background, they're wrestling in my living room. Warwick with James at the detention center. James is telling him that like, it's very black and white at the detention center, meaning that like, you hang out with people of your own skin color. Like that's how it is. Like there's, it does not mix in this detention center. We then see a reenactment of the brawl that happened that he was the only witness to. So we see a reenactment of that. We then go
stabbing.
Yes.
So Spot the Guest Star moment. Technically not a Spot the Guest Star on account of the fact that this person has already been on this show.
Okay.
But I missed Spot the Guest Star from episode 3.
Yeah.
I know James is this guy named Sam Jones who was on like 10 seasons or something of Smallville, which I used to watch religiously.
Oh, okay. I knew he looked familiar.
He's Clark Kent's best friend, Pete.
Oh my gosh. I knew he looked familiar, but I thought it was just because I've seen him in this show so many times.
It was so dark. It was such a I feel like it was like a weird way that was a weird first episode he was in.
Yeah.
But also like when I went to IMDb to see the other person, I saw his IMDb photo and I was like, why does that kid look so much more familiar? Well, he was in another episode. It must be it. And then he was walking through the yard and I don't know, it was like that. It's like Superman Red, the jumper that he's wearing or something. And all of a sudden it just triggered that memory. And I went, wait a second. And I went back to the page and looked it up. It was in like 86 episodos of Smallville.
Oh
I've seen every episode of Smallville. And I was like, oh yeah, it was like Pete and whoever Allison Mack used to play. It was the Clark's other friend who apparently started a cult. Yeah,
she did some really scary stuff in real life, not in the show.
Sam Jones, by the way, I looked at his Wikipedia. He had some troubled life, so he kind of fell off the place for a while. I guess he's back to acting. But
good for him.
He had a weird period in his life, including he was incarcerated for a period of time. So he was reverse method acting.
Yeah, reverse method acting. Yes. So we go on over to Nick and Sarah with O'Reilly. I told Nick before we started recording that like I was gonna have words for this episode, and this is where I have words. So Nick and Sarah go out like into the wilderness, the Nevada wilderness. They find a body, no head, skinned, hands and feet amputated. Looks like it was a meteor hit, meaning like it came from the sky. Somehow neither of them thought it wasn't a person. People trained.
Oh, didn't realize it wasn't a person even.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
They thought it was a person. People trained to like
yeah, I know.
Study the human body and be like intimately familiar with like human anatomy, saw this body and we're like, yeah, it's just a big guy.
What movie is this from? Is it
happening?
Is it Boondock Saints or I think it was like it was like a huge friggin' dude or something, or the line is, but
oh gosh, I don't
just
know.
Imagine a human like that when they have him on the body on the table later. It's kind of like
gigantic. Like
it's like at first you think the person's like overweight, then you realize it's supposed to all be muscle.
Right.
And it's like insane.
Yeah. So somehow they don't. No red flags raised. This is totally normal. We don't need
headless.
To worry about
it's Robert De Silva or whatever his name was.
Yeah, it has Victor De Silva.
Victor De Silva.
Yeah. So then we go back to, and again, I apologize, audience. This episode just jumps all over the place constantly. So there's going to be a lot of like, and we go back here, and we go back here. We're back with Warwick. He's going into the detention hall. All of the juvenile delinquents are like out there kind of like hassling him. He is like, checking out the scene. There's like a sheet covered in blood. He looks at like James's bunk area. He then goes into the bathroom section and sees what I assume is like a red tinge in one of the toilet bowls, and then reaches in and pulls out a bloody shirt. Yeah. So he's like, oh, like
I kept thinking there was going to be like a name on the shirt. Like, isn't that like a thing I've seen in prison movies before? Where
that they put their name on it,
their names on it, and that's how he was going to identify who it belonged to, and it never came up again.
It did not come up again. No. So we're then with Nick and Sarah in the garage. They are snooping for Trace. They're like technically snooping for Trace in Catherine and Grissom's evidence. So they investigate the BMW. They end up, finding some samples, which come up pretty soon. But before that, we are back again with Doc Robbins with Grissom. And this is when the body is on, found body is on the table. And Doc Robbins is saying that, he's never seen anything like this before in his entire career. That all the injuries, his body has like tons of injuries, like so many bones broken. It had to happen from a very, very steep fall. And then he holds on to the best part for last when he tells Grissom that the torso is not human.
I like how also he's like, yep, couldn't possibly ever tell you what it was.
Yeah, can't tell you what it is.
The list of humanoid looking creatures, it's just so long. You're going to need an anthropology expert in here. Grissom, who knows a little bit about everything and is Mr. Jump to Conclusions.
Yep. So
he just wants to get his girl back in the room. That's all.
Yes, exactly. I mean, his face lit up when Doc Robbins was like, "We need an anthropologist." He was like, "I know an anthropologist."
This is our Thanksgiving weekend recording episode.
Yes, we're recording this the Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
So it's a little bit of early Christmas miracle for Gil Grissom.
Yeah, for Gil Grissom. We then go to Greg Sanders looking down a scope. We learn that the material that they pulled off the gas pedal of the BMW is peanuts.
I thought it was onions when I first saw it.
To be fair, like I can see that it could look like onion skin. I made onions as part of my dinner tonight, and yeah, the skin is familiar.
I did. Oh, actually, no. This comes later. When we get back to the peanuts again next time, I have a funny note.
Oh, okay.
Which I think will resonate with you.
Okay, sweet. So Jim Brass and Grissom arrive at a house. It's like covered in plastic because it's being painted, and they meet a Trent Calloway. He's the one painting the house. He says that he saw De Silva a day or two ago. Jim Brass and Grissom kind of like, do some investigating around the house. Jim Brass finds like a ripped up picture. So it's like Victor De Silva is still in the picture, but like the other half has been ripped out. And then Grissom finds peanut shells in like the sole of one of the shoes in the closet.
So I just wrote in my notes, Texas Roadhouse.
Yes.
Which I'm not sure how widespread a Texas Roadhouse is.
I have no idea.
If you're outside the United States.
I think it's like New England. I think it's New England and maybe the Midwest.
Yeah. So,
I'd be shocked if it's actually in Texas, because it's not that. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like Texans would be like, this is crap.
For anyone who doesn't know what Texas Roadhouse is, it is a sort of chain restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
They serve like barbecue, and they have like steaks with like a meat display case, but
they do have some of the best cinnamon butter.
Yeah, cinnamon butter bread rolls. Basically, the reason you go to Texas Roadhouse is for the bread. There's usually always a 5-hour wait to get a table.
Yep.
But yeah, they have buckets, like they use the barrels, like they're, in a country western, and they fill them full of peanuts, and there's just peanuts all over the shells, all over the floor all the time.
Yep.
Which more or less comes true at the end of this episode.
Yep.
I don't know if this place is a knockoff of Texas Roadhouse, or if Texas Roadhouse is a knockoff of this, or is this a fictional place? Homage. I didn't look that up, but
I didn't look it up either. I did my second watch of the episode today, which means I didn't do like any research.
Let's see. Texas Roadhouse is headquartered in Louisville, Kentucky. Apparently,
okay.
It's an original restaurant in Clarksville, Indiana.
Okay. Yeah. See. Yeah. Midwest.
There's 627 locations in 49 U.S. states. I'm really gonna laugh if the one state they're not in is
Texas.
It might be true.
That would be amazing.
In 29 international locations in 10 countries. So you might even have heard of this if you don't live in the United States.
International. We do have a few international listeners. So be curious to hear if you guys have a Texas Roadhouse in your neck of the woods. So we then go to Warwick with who we assume is a maintenance guy at the detention center.
Yep.
He opens up a pipe.
Does the pipe have a name?
I don't know if he knows exactly which pipes go to which toilets, because he just went to one pipe and opened the pipe up. Like he wasn't like, oh, let me open up a few of these. He just went to one specific pipe and was like, boop.
I feel like he called it something like Marta or Bertha or something.
Oh gosh, maybe.
It's like yeah. I was the second I watched it, I was like, yeah, that definitely sounds like you're referring to it by a name.
That's strange. Okay. I mean, but this episode is just strange all around, so that would not surprise me. Warwick then pulls out fabric. I think it's another shirt or something like that. But what's more important is that wrapped up inside of it is a shank made from a toothbrush. So assault weapon acquired. So we go to Doc Robbins with Dr. Miller, Grissom, Nick, and Sarah. This is when we learn, crazy enough, the body is a gorilla. Because as Nick pointed out earlier, how many humanoid primates are there that are close to us in size?
Yeah, not even close to us in size, but much more gigantic than us.
Right. Yes.
Like chimpanzees, orangutans, they're not enormously larger than humans.
Right. You don't want to fight. You don't want to fight one though. You're probably going to lose.
Oh yeah,
they'll rip your face off.
A chimpanzee is stronger than you.
Yeah. Don't
half your weight, twice your strength.
Yeah. Do not fight chimpanzees is what we're trying to tell you. So this transitions us to Sarah researching the bushmeat trade. So this kind of underground hunting bushmeat.com.
Which don't go to that website.
Do not. Oh gosh, no, please don't. We do not condone that website.
She kind of get to these websites later, but when they do get there, all I can think is this is very much like the internet's new, and we're trying to impress people with website names. And I was like, man, it's been a long time since people have tried to impress people with names
website
of websites.
Names, yeah. So Grissom flips on the light. They end up having a bit of a back and forth about Sarah researching, spending time on the gorilla case, because Grissom is trying to say that, it's not really a case now, that it involves an animal, and we can't research, we can't investigate every time a dog is hit by a car.
Consumer. The incidents of poaching have increased in recent years.
What are you doing?
Working the case.
What case?
The skinned gorilla, torso, 40 miles outside of Baker, remember?
I don't think that is a case.
Well, it was at the start of shift. Crime's been committed.
I hate to be the one to state the obvious, but this isn't a human being we're dealing with, it's an animal.
And then he basically turns it around on her when she stands firm and is like, oh, I was just testing you. Keep researching the gorilla case. Again, work on your management skill, Grissom. This is just so weird.
You're the kind of guy who would bring an employee on a roller coaster as a form of job evaluation.
Yeah. That doesn't come up later at all. That's not a thing that happens.
I was happy to see the roller coaster come back at the end of this episode.
Yeah, we did. We talked about it quite a bit when it first showed up. So we go to Catherine and Nick. They're having a little walk and talk in the hallway, And this is when Nick tries to do like the word puzzle on Catherine, but Catherine solves it. So it just kind of like negates the point that he was trying to make, because he's like, oh, okay, you got it. Never
deep
mind.
down inside, I felt like Catherine knew what Nick was doing and was just trolling him.
That I
she's probably
I would kind of appreciate that. We then go to Greg Sanders with work. They're checking out the toothbrush, so the shank. We then go to Nick and Catherine at a storage facility. They find bloody sock prints. I started writing footprints, and then I was like, I had to cross it out and put sock, because it's bloody sock prints. We learn that the storage shed is registered to Victor, and Catherine thinks that the victim was killed there. So at this stage in the investigation, Catherine is thinking that he was killed at the storage facility. This comes back up later. We then go to Catherine and Grissom with the skull. So they did manage to boil the head and remove all of the skin and hair and all that good stuff. Catherine gets her evaluation, which is just keep up the good work. And Catherine fairly kind of looks at Grissom like, anything else? Like, other feedback would be great. Like, you're my manager. Please guide me in the correct direction. They're trying to figure out, though, when it comes to the skull, why someone would use the claw end of the hammer. Because they're realizing that the wound on the top of the head, or near the top of the head, is from the forked part of the hammer. And they're like, that doesn't make any sense. Catherine then realizes, and this is where, she is keeping up that good work, that maybe this wasn't used to kill him. Maybe this was to try to shove him into the locker that they found him in.
Although in the reenactment, it was just used to hold his head, really cut his head off.
I think he tries to shove him in and then realizes that he can't, and then is like, all right, I'm going to cut his head off. So
why does he take the head with him? They never answer this question.
Because he couldn't fit it into the locker, I think.
Well, now that it's disconnected, you imagine it probably fits down by his feet or something, right?
Yeah.
That's, like, they don't explain it, and they don't attempt to explain it.
Yeah, I guess they don't.
It just gets
just another weird thing.
Sentimental,
I mean, this was a relationship, and this is how he wants to, hold on to that relationship, is with his head in his trunk.
It's one of the many loose ends. Like, do the Victoria's Secret girls ever get charged for Grand Theft Auto?
We don't know. We never find out.
We'll never know.
We then go to Nick and Sarah at Victor's house. They realize that so the shoes that had the peanuts in them were a size 11, but De Silva shoe size is actually a size 10. So this is where Nick is kind of like, these must be somebody else's shoes, right? Like, there must have been somebody else here with these shoes. And then they see the work shirt for Spurs Corral, which is their version of Texas Roadhouse, or as close as we can make a comparison. We then Doc Robbins makes a lot of cameos in this episode. I'm like, Doc Robbins again. So Doc Robbins is with Grissom and Catherine. The body that they found in the storage facility is De Silva's body. So they've now found the correct body to go with the head that they found earlier. They also learned that his cause of death was not, in fact, the head wounds. He was shot in the heart. Like, his heart was obliterated. Like, it was like a perfect apple explosion.
I've never heard of that happening before, but I've seen a lot of things shot at short point range on YouTube videos, and I imagine it's very possible.
I would think it is. So then there is a little bit of discourse between Grissom and Catherine, because she hadn't told Grissom that the body was found wrapped in plastic. And Grissom was like, that would be really nice to know, because there's plastic hanging up all over the place at his house because it's being painted. So, like, it'd be really good to know that the body was wrapped in plastic when you found it in the storage shed.
You know what my response was? Gee, Grissom, it would have been really good if you told Catherine, the person who's working this case with you, that the entire house is wrapped in plastic because it's being painted.
No. Everyone needs to communicate with him. He does not need to communicate to anybody else. That's not how it works.
He puts the I in team.
Yeah. We then go to Jim Brass and Catherine with Trent, the painter. This is where we learn through, I feel like, way too much dialogue that he has size 13 feet. So he's not the killer.
Yeah.
That's all we needed to know in this scene, was that it's size 13 feet.
Like, they asked, like, what size shoes? Like, size 13. Just look at the size of that man.
He's huge.
He's a big dude.
He's a big dude.
You'd probably be like, yeah, no, probably. Can we see your shoe? No, we have to take a footprint.
Yeah. So they take a footprint. They confirm that his foot size is 2 sizes too big to match the sock prints that they pulled from the scene. Jim Brass and Grissom are then at said restaurant, and Nick is already there. And there's a moment where Grissom is kind of like zoning out while Nick is talking, and you just kind of hear like Nick muffled in the background because Grissom is like staring at the sombrero that's on the wall. And we realize that the sombrero on the wall is the same one that's in the ripped up picture. So they go to the restaurant manager and are like, hey, can you identify this ear? And he's like, what do you, no. And then he looks at it and he's like, oh, actually I can.
Might be my favorite line in the whole episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like, can you identify this ear? No, actually, I can identify that ear. Because that's the most humanistic response ever. What are you talking about? Can I identify
I can't. I'm not going to be able to tell by someone's ear.
What do you think I am? Sherlock Holmes? And then he's like, actually, no, that's a pretty identifiable ear.
Yeah, they're like, oh, actually, just kidding. So we're introduced to Fred Applewhite, who I originally wrote down as Applewood, and then the whole rest of the episode, they call him Applewhite. So I don't know if they call him Applewood in the first one and then change it, or I just misheard the first time. But I initially wrote down Applewood, and they kept saying Applewhite later on, and I was like, oh, maybe I misheard.
I feel like that whole reveal scene, I was confused, because they try to like give you a shot of his ear so that you would visually connect it to the photograph, and they pan out, and he's this like cool guy side profile picture.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this shot? That was my only thought.
Yeah,
I wasn't taking
so many questions around this episode.
It's the difference between being a prodigious note taker and being me.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just furiously jotting down notes.
I'm like, what is this shot? This is so weird.
Yeah. And I'm just like pausing every 2 seconds to make sure I'm not missing something that happened in the episode. I'm like, I don't want to miss something. We then have Sarah with Dr. Miller. We learn that according to CDC, Dr. Miller has to take some samples, but then, like dispose of the body. And we learned, sadly, about what they would use, that the head would be a trophy and the hands would be ashtrays and the skin would be used to make purses and things like that. And Sarah, wants to do something about this, even though Dr. Miller, like, quickly shuts her down and thinking she's going to, like, find the people who did it. Dr. Miller, like, no, you're not. Like,
they're gone.
They're gone. You're not going to do that, but you can do something for me, which brings us to Sarah in the desert burying the ashes.
On like on top of a mountain, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's in the desert. It's on the hills. I don't know.
I mean, there's not a lot of water in Vegas. It is definitely still a desert.
Yeah. So we then go to Nick and Catherine with Applewhite. They make him walk and run while they're taking prints. So they like put black ink on the bottom of his feet and then have him walk and then run. This then transitioned us to Grissom, Nick, and Jim Brass with Applewhite. And I had to make a note here. Because again, there wasn't enough weird things in this episode already. They're interrogating him in the evidence room? Yeah. Like, he's not in the interrogation room. He's like in one of their evidence rooms. What are you doing?
And also,
what's happening here?
You should be recording everything he says, because he definitely admits to the crime during the scene. And now it's literally your word against his.
So strange. So they're letting him know that it was his footprints at the crime scene. We learned that he was Victor's partner. We also learned that his fingerprints are on the plastic that Victor's body was wrapped in. We see a reenactment from Grissom's point of view about what he thinks happened. And they ask him, like, why did you run back in, like after you put the head in the car, why did you run back in to the storage facility and like leave your car running outside? Like, why would you ever do that? And he says it's because he forgot to lock the shed. So he ran back in to lock the shed. So Victor, you're not not Victor, sorry. Fred, you're not a great guy, but I apologize if you have ADHD like I do, and you do that all the time.
I mean, really, if you didn't take the head with him, it wouldn't have mattered.
It wouldn't have
just
mattered.
Got his car back from the two girls who stole it.
Yeah.
He could have been like, yeah, I was at the storage shed. I forgot to lock it. I ran back inside. And like, why didn't you report it? He's like, he probably like, it was late. I need to get home.
Yeah.
They were probably like, oh, you were probably drunk. You don't admit it.
Yeah.
We get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you could pick your car up at the tow lot.
Right. Yeah. So we then move to O'Reilly and Warwick with Ronnie Connors, one of the other juveniles at the detention center, who maybe has my favorite line from this episode. He's like trying to act all tough, like I'm with the Crips and I'm, like I'm this big tough guy that like runs the
macaroni.
show. I'm the macaroni.
Yes. I know how much offspring I have up in here or something like that. He says.
What? What?
That was not slang when I was a kid.
This is definitely old white guy trying to write a street character.
Yeah.
This is painful. This is legitimately painful. So, but it's Ronnie. Ronnie's the one who did the stabbing with the shank, and
RC.
Warwick lets James know that he doesn't need to testify because there's enough evidence. So, he's off the hook for having to testify because Ronnie, RC's DNA was like all over the blade because he used it to shave before he used it to stabby stab.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which we all know means that no one else could possibly have made a shank out of your razor blade. Also, totally glad that they just let them hold on to the razor blades. I'm not sure why he needed to turn to a shank at all. You could definitely just kill someone with a blade in your fingers.
Yeah. I don't. And
also, most importantly, in prison, if you don't testify, then they let you go. They don't care that you may or may not have been talking to the police officer. Only if you testify.
Only if you testify. That's the only problem.
The only time they hold you accountable for potentially narking to the police.
Yeah, that's the only time. But Grandpa enters and they have a nice little like hug and reunion, and it's very sweet and very cute and I think very well acted. So I will give both actors credit on that one, that I thought this was like a really touching little scene between them reconnecting.
John Beasley.
And then
who I believe was a Spot the guest star in that episode, right? I don't know.
I don't know.
I think I just said it like he looks like I've seen him in a million things.
Yeah, I think that's what you said. I don't think we had an official Spot the guest star with him.
I don't know a thing that he was in. Like,
and then we go to a scene that Nick has referenced with Grissom and Warwick on a roller coaster. And that's Warwick's evaluation is, you're good enough for me to take you on a roller coaster ride.
Well, no. I think how he handles the roller coaster determines whether he becomes a CSI level 3. Because as far as we know, actually no.
He is. He did get promoted.
Does it go up or down? Does it go level 4 or level 2? Who knows?
Gosh, I don't know.
We'll have to find out. Maybe we'll get promoted again.
We'll find out.
What level CSI is Sarah again?
I don't know. Well, according to IMDb, she's none because she's just Saracidal and she's not CSI Saracidal. So according to IMDb, she is 0. But I know we've talked about this a bit already. But Nick, what did you think about this episode?
As many problems as I have with this episode, it's not that bad. It's not winning an Emmy by any stretch of the imagination.
What? Really?
There are parts of it that I really liked. I think like formulaically, I really liked it. They had like a lot like the interwoven two stories line with the gorilla. There's a lot of nonsense in this episode.
There's so much nonsense.
It made it. I felt like I kept having to pull myself back into focus. You know what I mean? Like if we were recording a podcast and this was like a YouTube video, I might have not finished the video. I might have been like, I'm not paying attention to this. Let me go.
Yeah.
But because I'm like forcing myself to pay attention to it, sometimes I was like, wait, what did he? I literally didn't realize the gorilla was decapitated until later.
Oh, okay.
Because I just missed it because I was like, looking
you looked away for like
I
a
let
second.
anything else distract me for a moment.
Yeah.
And then the second walkthrough, I was like, yep, watched it. I was like, yep, they definitely said it the first time.
Yep.
And I wrote skydiver in my notes at one point. I was like, oh, there's a bloody body on the ground. I wonder if this guy jumped out of a plane because there are no prints around. And then I was like, he's decapitated and skinless. Oh, I missed all that.
Yep. Nope. It's all.
Yeah, I assume. I mean, I know this is, you mentioned a little bit earlier that maybe not one of your favorites.
No, one of my favorites. No, I think, and I'll also admit that I think having to take fairly detailed notes to kind of guide, our recap of the episode through this podcast, when it moves around, I think like when it moves around this much, it feels frustrating.
Yeah.
When I'm just like, oh god, oh yeah, okay, and there's another scene. Oh, there's another scene.
And
there's another scene. Oh, there's another scene. It's a little frustrating.
And then when the episode has other frustrating things, it probably compounds.
It compounds. And I will admit I was a little distracted my first watch through of it. So much so that when I watched it the second time, I basically realized that I remembered next to nothing from the Warwick storyline. Like I was like, this is like me watching it for the first time almost, even though I watched this episode already. Like it was a very weird, really did not hold my attention.
That whole storyline was weird too, because they were like, oh, he's for that kid that he knows. Remember there was like the kid that got in trouble at the casino. Yeah. And I thought that's what it was gonna be. And then it's like, wait, you know who this person is too. You worked that case, Catherine. Or I was like,
it was Catherine. It was Warwick and Catherine on that.
And
case.
she's like, this kid he knows. I was like, you know him too.
Yeah, you're like, you were there.
Yeah,
but,
so it's a weird episode.
Yeah, I don't think it's a worse. Like, it's not the plane episode.
We've had much worse episodes recently.
Yeah, I agree. I would say
middle pack, lower middle pack. Probably.
I would say lower middle pack is where I would put this episode. And again,
one standard deviation below the mean.
Yeah, I think again, part of my frustration is that when they jump scenes so often, it can be a little frustrating to take notes. And I will admit that I think that affected how I feel about this episode. But
I definitely could have done 1 page of notes on this one. My notes are all spread out over an open notebook.
Oh, okay.
Over half of the notebook is blank.
Yeah. So we'll see how we feel about next week's episode. We'll be back next week with our
season finale.
The season finale. So season 1, episode 23, The Strip Strangler, which is the season finale. So we'll be done with season 1 in our next episode, which is very exciting. And then we have to decide if we're going to do like a recap show or what we're going to do. We haven't quite decided. We'll figure that out. But in the meantime, you can find us on Facebook at Who Are You? A CSI podcast. You can also find us on Twitter/X, Instagram, and Threads at Who Are You? CSI pod. You can also reach out to us via email at whoareyouscsi@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you guys. And I know we said this last week, but we're going to say it again this week. If you know somebody who enjoys CSI, feel free to let them know about our podcast. And we ordered business cards. So if you ever see us in person, we're happy to also give you our business cards. They're en route, which is very exciting. And we might be able to announce like some places we might be soon that are fairly public, because we're not going to like invite you over to our house. But if we're going to be in a public place together, we'll let you know and you can come over and say hi to us. So we'll keep you guys all posted. But yeah, that is it until next week.
No spoilers.
No spoilers.